Welcome to this fifth episode of our MBA application journey series, where we basically have conversations with MBA candidates from top business schools to learn about their application journeys. Um, my name is Ayush, and I'm a first year candidate at Columbia Business School in New York. If you guys can hear me fine, uh, can someone just comment so that I know that I'm audible and you can hear me fine? Nishant, I'm just waiting for a few people to respond so that I can resume the
Sure.
session accordingly.
Yeah, if my opinion matters, then I can hear you fine.
Great. Okay, so I got great. I think I got a number of people who replied. Great.
Hmm.
So so I think before I start off today's session, I do want to take a moment to thank everyone for the amazing response that we've been getting so far. This is our fifth episode. We've already done four, and I'm very glad that you guys have been finding these sessions useful, and we'll continue to do four more. Um, so that's great, and also thanks for the feedback that you've been sharing with me. It's really important for me. Um, and next, I just want to introduce today's speaker. So we have with us Nishant, a very good friend of mine and a batchmate at Columbia Business School, doing his first year MBA there. In fact, we've been working together since 2019. Nishant, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, seems like there is a tech. Okay, okay, sorry. I think the people lost me into introduction. Nishant, did you get the part where I was introducing you and just giving a brief background on you?
I mean, that's fine. I think you started on that, and I lost you on that in the middle part of it. But that's fine. If you've already gone ahead with the intro, we can dive into the.
Okay, yeah, sure. So let me just do a sure. Let me just do a very quick recap. So sorry, I don't know why that happened. What I was saying was that Nishant is a first year MBA candidate at CBS, Columbia Business School. He did his engineering from University of Pune and has worked in the oil and gas industry for 6+ years, almost 7 years before he came to CBS. So that's just a little bit of context on Nishant's background. To explain the layout of the session to you, we will start off by understanding why Nishant chose to do an MBA and what was his school selection strategy. We then move on to talk about GMAT and how sort of e-GMAT helped him improve his GMAT score to 740, which is a great score. We will then talk about what Nishant's views are on what the right age is to do an MBA. We then move on to his experience with his MBA consultant, how he practiced for interviews, and I think finally close off with how the current COVID-19 pandemic has affected his business school experience and his recruitment, which he sort of will has gone through a bit and will. Great. So I think quickly just moving on to the question I have for Nishant, would be great to just start. Can you hear me, Nishant?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So I think just starting off with the first, uh, why MBA at this stage of your career, considering like you were doing really well in the oil and gas industry, managed like large, diverse teams, and we're doing really well there. So I think the important question being like, why did you suddenly decide to do an MBA?
I mean, Ayush, that's a good question, and it's for someone, it's for everyone to actually introspect and consider as to why they need to make such an investment. Honestly, not only on themselves, but in terms of monetary, but as well as you know, intellectually, if they want to go ahead and take an MBA, if MBA is the best route. So for me, I think I started seriously thinking about the MBA during the 2014, 2015 oil crisis, that the downturn that the industry was going through. So the industry had gone from $140 per barrel of oil to about $30 per barrel of oil, and that kind of had a huge shock on the entire system. At that point in time, a lot of us actually started, thinking of the MBA. It would surprise you that most of the managers within our field, within the organization, do not have an MBA. They generally have an engineering degree and they progress. So naturally, no one kind of thinks of an MBA or an advanced degree to get into that position. So the MBA, I mean, the way I thought about it is, if I, let's say, get out of this industry, what other skill sets do I possess? Can I go to some other industry, contribute there? And there didn't seem to be much. Okay. The other thing that I saw was this, guys. See, my company was in a growth phase when I joined in. Okay. So at that point in time, we were taking through decisions through the engineering team, but as the company kind of settled down into in its later stages, the power and the decision making power itself moved on to the financial side of the team and the management side. I kind of saw a ceiling which I couldn't pass through if I did not have an MBA. I could definitely go on to become a team leader for a large team, but would I have real actual strategic decision making in my hands? I don't think that was obvious to me. I didn't see any of my bosses going through it. I mean, they did not have that kind of influence or decision making power, and that kind of initiated my decision to go for an MBA, first of all. Secondly, I think, as I've mentioned in the first point, I also wanted something more out of my engineering career. I needed something more of an influence making role, a decision power making role. So the MBA seemed to be the right place to go ahead and do it, as opposed to something else like an MS or like a PhD, for that matter.
Right. Great. And I think like a automatic follow-up question that I have to that is like, were you also considering geographies other than the US, like something like an ISB in India, which is again a great school, great brand name. So how did you sort of decide which are the schools that you want to apply to, like including the geographies?
Right. I think more than the geography, honestly, I was more interested in the 2 year MBA program. And the US is generally a big part of the cohort when it comes to the two-year MBA program, right? So the US kind of fell naturally into the system of things. Regarding the geography, the alternative geographies were what? Singapore, India, and let's say the European nations, right? So once you look through that, most of the programs in these areas are generally 1 year programs. And for me, since I mentioned that I did not, I mean, I wanted to go through a career transition, I strongly felt that a 2 year MBA program would be more useful to me. Don't get me wrong, you can squeeze in MBA programs education into 1 year program. That's for sure. You can do it. But what you are going to try, what I was trying to take through it was the entire experience of going through the 2 year MBA program. So that you have the breaks in between. You can go ahead and interact with your fellow classmates and get that bonding going on, right? Plus, the 2 year MBA program also gives you more of a leeway in terms of where you want to do your internship and where you want to end up, like finally as a full-time job, right? So since I was trying to make a career transition, I was trying to experiment through things, a 2 year MBA program kind of made a lot more sense. In terms of geographies, then the US is like a natural choice when it comes to the 2 year MBA program, because most of the programs here are 2 year, right? If you go back to look to India, uh, ISB is 1 year. If you look at European Union, maybe apart from LBS, all of these schools are 1 year programs. So those kind of did not fall into my scheme of things.
Sure, great. And what attracted you to CBS? You're the first speaker that we've had who He's at Columbia Business School. So I think would love to understand a little bit about what was something about Columbia Business School that really attracted you to it.
Sure. I mean, that makes the two of us, right? You're also at CBS. You can also contribute to this discussion.
Right.
So that being said, CBS. So when I started looking at schools, honestly, I was very interested in the financial side of the things, right? So I wanted to get into financial services right after school, and that's how my school selection strategy kind of went through. So I was looking at good schools such as Wharton, Booth, CBS. I honestly did not look much at LBS, but LBS was, came up on my radar for a few moments before it disappeared again. So these were kind of my big ticket NYU Stern as well, big ticket schools that I was looking at. CPS, what was attractive was that first of all, it's in New York City. I think that's the biggest takeaway. And you love the city, you hate the city, this city is going to give you a lot. Okay, you can go out at any point in time without any worries. You can make a ton of friends, and you can explore a lot of different areas within the city. So let's say you could end up at a Philly or a Boston, but then that wouldn't kind of give you the experience in terms of experiencing the city life that you want to. Plus the industries are, I mean, all the headquarters are here, right? So you must have experienced, so did I, that we had to go out on the subway, meet these folks who were recruiting us, and meet them on a daily basis as such, right? So my network kind of like really expanded, which is what I expected before coming to CBS. The second part is, I think the third part rather. So first part was the financial, the finance curriculum here at CBS. The second part was the NYC advantage, and the third part was this is something personal to me, was the value investing curriculum here at CBS. Okay, so I was reading through a lot of Buffett, a lot of Charlie Munger, and Peter Lynch, and that kind of had an influence. And I secretly wanted to land up here with all my heart to to this headquarters of value investing and learn from the greats here. And that's been great, more or less true for from what I've experienced here. Right. Okay. I mean, so I think we're probably losing Ayush for a bit, and he kind of mentioned initially also that as to how I went about improving my score from a 570 to a 740. I think that was an important part of my journey, and you need to figure out as to why you need to have a runway, basically, from the day you start thinking about the MBA program, and finally the day that you end up doing it. um, I think e-GMAT was extremely helpful to me in that regard, because I think mainly 3 points rather. It was because of the scholarinium I kind of got to understand what areas I was kind of weak at and what areas I need to focus on. Secondly, the concepts for me at e-GMAT, before going through all these other materials such as class coaching, self-study, e-GMAT kind of provided the videos and the concepts which were easily understandable at any point in time. And also I e-GMAT also helped me with the application of that concept. I mean, you can go through a lot of material, but you don't necessarily understand the application of that material per se. So e-GMAT does a really good work on applying the concepts on actual GMAT questions, and that kind of helps you develop a focus as well as a framework on how do you go about answer those questions. I mean, that's great for verbal. They do it greatly for quant as well, and I'm a fan. That's it. Okay, so I can see the question now on the screen. It says, "What advice do you have for candidates who are above the average age at top business schools?" Right. So I think this is a question that I had to ask myself as well. Because I worked in the industry for about 7 years before deciding to go for business school. Um, the main I mean, you kind of think that you're probably a little older than the average candidate, but also that also kind of gives you a lot of advantages, right? So advantage number one will probably be in terms of what in terms of the experience that you already have, right? So if you have, let's say, 5 or more than 5 years of experience, then you probably have gone through a lot of leadership challenges in your career, maybe a few failures, maybe quite a few successes, and have had time negotiating with bosses, negotiating with management, and those are some stories that you can bring in richly, into your essays. uh, the second advantage you probably have is you can kind of understand what the younger students are kind of writing as well, and that kind of gives you a on um, uh, viewpoint on what your competition is actually trying to write, and that gives you mileage ahead of yourself, mileage that can put you ahead of the competition. So that's important, I believe. And What you should try and leverage is honestly your experience and your stories that you've built in these multitude of years of experience, which can easily surpass any other disadvantage you might have at the end of the day.
Uh, so hi guys, I'm
I
Karthike. I'm from e-GMAT. Ayush is facing some technical issues, so I'll be taking it from now on. So Nishant, I mean, while taking up your MBA applications, you might have felt some challenges. So
Mhm.
did you hire a consultant, and why did you think that it was the right decision? So
Mhm.
can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, Karthik, I think that's a great question, and I don't know if people have gone through my journey. So I had hired a consultant, but I was at different stage of my application process. So it really depends on which stage you're at. Let's say you are a novice entirely, and you do not know and you do not understand as to how the application process actually works. Then it's great to hire a consultant. I mean, they can work you through the research of the schools. They can work you through as to what the school is expecting in terms of the answers, and what are these key points that you need to hit for each school. Okay. um, but for me, I don't think that was necessarily the biggest advantage. I had a chat with Rajat from e-GMAT as well, and he kind of introduced me to Applicant Lab, which I think is a fantastic resource, guys. Absolutely great for someone who's trying to get through, doing things by themselves, right? It's a self starter kind of a platform wherein you go ahead and think through, what your past has been, what do you want to do in the future, and there will be prompts on Applicant Lab that you can really use to leverage your application. So at the end of the day, consultants are important, yes, but if you've had significant experience and you know what you need to write, then you honestly don't need a consultant. An Applicant Lab will do really well for you. But let me rephrase this in a minute. I'm not saying you do not need any consultant. You would need some help because you need to show your work to someone to make sense, to understand if it makes sense or not. The story needs to be about you, because uh, if you, let's say, if someone else drafts that story for you, then that authenticity is lost and you don't kind of get the point that you need to get across. I think the second part about consultant, which kind of bugs me a little bit, is that once you hire a consultant, you might feel that you have given up the driver's seat, you've given up control. Okay. I do not want to feel like that, because I want to be in control of my application. Okay. So if, let's say, you give the fees first, and then what happens is these guys will tell you which schools to apply to, which may not be your favorite schools. Okay. And these guys might also tell you as to what to specifically point out in your essays. While those may be great templates and points, but is that story which is going to come out, is that authentically you? I mean, you have to review it at the end of the day, and you might find that this is it does not, it does not authentically reflect you, and may really impede your chances of getting into a business at the end of the day. I hope that's answered the questions.
Yeah, it does. That's a great point. So I think Ayush is back. Ayush, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me? I can hear you very clearly.
Yeah. I can hear you.
Okay, so you can take it from here.
Okay, great. Sure. Sorry, and I really apologize to everyone. I think I'm just facing some patchy internet issues, which is I had to drop off. Thank you, Karthikeya, for pitching in. Nishant, just moving on to the next question. I think another very important one, and people really stress about this a lot, is how do you prepare for these interviews? Because I know, like, I myself stressed about this a little too much, because I was like, I don't know, like, what am I going to talk about? I was really nervous, but like in the end, it turned out to be like something very different from what I expected. So would love to understand, like, what was your preparation strategy for these interviews?
Sure. Honestly, my entire challenge in the application process was probably to get to the interviews. I knew that if I could get to the interviews, then I would. I had lots of interesting stories to talk about, and that would pull me through. Okay. So, I mean, in terms of, and that comes back to the 7 years of experience that I had, right? I had gathered so many experiences throughout. I could coherently talk about it, and it would make up for a very interesting discussion with the person. So again, to prepare, first you have to go ahead and review your own application. Okay, look at what you have written. Make sure whatever you talk about is is coherent to what you have written. Okay, so most of these interviews generally do not have an application copy. So you can regurgitate, basically rejig whatever you have written in your application and talk to them about it, and tell the story in a new format so that it actually comes alive. Okay. Secondly, what you also need to have is, let's say, 4 to 5 anecdotes which can fit into the category of leadership, ethics, team successes, and personal successes in a lot of ways, right? So have 4 to 5 stories, and these are basically like a high-level overview of what you should be thinking about when you're preparing for some of those stories. So when you have those stories ready to go, you can pitch into one of these, one of these criteria, one of these questions that come through. So those are like the general questions. The interview experience, I thought would be much more. Let's just say it was much more harsh in a way, because I thought like this is what Indian companies like they interview, right? They want to get to the bottom of it, and they want to figure out that if you actually know your stuff or not. So that's the way I prepared, but I was kind of pleasantly surprised to find out it was more of a conversation, like honestly like the one we are having right now, right? So if let's say you have any clarifications and you were the interviewer, you will go ahead and ask me in a very empathetic manner without actually trying to get me nervous. So the interviewer's agenda is to have more of a connect with you and figure out that if you're a good fit for the school. That's what you have to demonstrate at the end of the day. I mean, if you've gotten to the interview stage, you probably have ticked all the basic requirements for the school, and the interview is trying to gauge if you're a fit for the school. And you cannot come across as someone who's sharp-elbowed. You cannot come across as someone who's extremely competitive and trying to get through, his own thing. So make sure that you have your stories and make sure of some of these points, and I think you'll do well in that case.
I think exactly that was my experience as well. That just going into the interviews thinking that this is going to be a stress interview and I don't know what I'm going to talk about. But when I got out of it, I was like, okay, this is like a very candid conversation that I had with them. So literally, like the advice there, what the point that Nishant is trying to drive home is, don't over prepare for your interviews. Like if you're aware of what you've written in your application, what your goals are, how you're sort of connecting the important pieces of your application together, that's it. And obviously, like to top it up with like some leadership examples, etc. So like just put it in your words. I mean, like they want to hear your story as opposed to some like an answer that you mugged up, because that like it's very evident when you're trying to like narrate a story which you sort of mugged up. Like it's very easy to say that on the face. So don't do that. Don't over prepare. So that's a great point, Nishant.
I mean,
Last couple of questions
from the experience.
Sure.
When I ended my CBS interview, this guy told me that he was fascinated by what I was speaking through, and he said he had never spoken to a petroleum engineer before, and it was fascinating to talk through the business, the whatever leadership examples you have had. So come to it like you are the owner of your life story, right? He or she doesn't know you, and just drive through that. He doesn't know you any better. You're your own guru in that sense.
Right, absolutely. Just last couple of questions, and I think then we'll take some questions from the audience. So next question, Nishant, I think just an overall reflection sort of a question where if you were to do the whole application process once again, what would be the three things that you do different?
I don't know if three things, but I definitely understand maybe two things like top of my mind that I could really do. First, I would never hire an expensive consultant. It's that's something that I'm very clear on in terms of the value that they bring out in your application, and in terms of the value that you can honestly reflect on your application and bring out. Okay, so you have to go ahead and take help from someone. That I'm not denying at all. Okay, but if consultant who's charging you, let's say north of 8 lakhs INR or 10 lakhs INR for let's say 5 schools or something, is definitely not worth your money, because you are again the master of your own story, right? You don't need someone else to tell you what you have done in your past life and to go forward from there. But yes, trust me, you need someone to look over your essays once you've written it, and also to give you like some kind of a structure. Again, like applicant lab did a fantastic job for me. What I did was I had taken a consultant, not an expensive one, honestly, and once I written through my essays with the help of applicant lab, I showed my essays to my consultant, and they kind of went through it, made some structural changes here and there, not too major, but I was also the driving force from that perspective. Okay, so you kind of think through that. The second question, I think, the second point rather, what would I do differently, is to provide myself a little bit more runway in terms of preparation for the MBA. Okay, and that is that is like people start thinking about the MBA, let's say in the third year of Work-ex, and they think that they'll go to join the MBA program on their fourth year of work experience, right? So it takes some time to build your profile if you haven't really thought about an MBA, and it takes time to go through some of those work, some of those leadership points that you need to build up your story and to need to build up your in your career itself. So don't get into it too late, and even if you do get into it too late, maybe hopefully you have a lot of work experience that can actually talk about why you need an MBA. Okay, I think that I hope that makes ton of sense for all you guys.
Sure, and I think great points, Nishant. I do have something to add on both those points. I think on your point about consultant, I do agree with you that it's not something for everyone. Like people have different opinions on that. Like I myself had a very good experience with my consultant. Again, it was not one of the most expensive consultants that I had. Like it was a decent amount, I would say, but again, like I thought I definitely got the value out of that. So again, like I think what Nishant is trying to say here is it's a different answer for different people. Like it really depends on what the shape of your application, what the shape of your essays are. Do you have people like in your network who can like help you in sort of like just reviewing your stories, etc., etc. Like for me, like I just thought like that I do need that external lens who can sort of help me with my stories and just structuring that. So I think definitely a value add for me. And I think just adding a point to your second point, Nishant, I think I cannot agree with you more. Like the first time that I thought of doing an MBA, when I thought that, okay, I'm ready to do an MBA, I think I was 25 years old. And I entered the CBS program at age 28. So definitely, I think because at 25, obviously you want to get into these top schools, but Nishant is absolutely right. Like these top schools are super competitive, and like again, like you need to be able to build your profile in a way that really increases your chances in getting into these schools. So again, like it's something that you have to think about, like how your sort of profile matches into what are the different things that a school is looking at, whether it's extracurricular, whether it's your grades and things like that. So I think overall it's a very tedious process, and so definitely take some time, think about it, talk to people, and then sort of apply. Don't rush into it too much. Great, Nishant. I have one last question.
Sure, go ahead.
Do you want to add something?
I mean, I just wanted to make this point. Let's say you figure out that on your third year that you want to apply for an MBA program, then you can take up, let's say, leadership opportunity within the organization for the next couple of months or 6 months or to 1 year itself. And then that helps you prepare for your stories on the MBA application. So that's the runway, like Ayush and I, we kind of thinking through, it is a process, right? You cannot have it that easy. Let's just make it very, very clear for all the people who are trying to apply.
Sure, absolutely. And I think, Nishant, just one last question, and this is like my top question, and I think it's very relevant for the time that we are in right now. So I think, again, two parts to this question. One, if you could just talk a little bit about how the current situation of COVID-19 has sort of affected your business school experience, both in terms of academics as well as recruitment. And I think secondly, I'm assuming a lot of people who have joined in are looking to apply for the 2021 intake batch. So they will be applying next year and hopefully start in 2021 fall. So what advice would you have for them, again, in the light of the pandemic that we are in currently?
I mean, there are two questions there, Ayush, and I'll try to tackle them separately. So first of all, I mean, how does the current pandemic affect the recruitment? I mean, so we've been trying for internships, and most of our internships have now, moved online for the remainder of the term itself, right? So the internship was going to be a great experience when you had to go out to actually these firms, meet these people, make those connections, and hopefully convert them to a full-time offer itself, right? So, but then whatever's happening right now, I think we feel really lucky because Columbia has done a lot in terms of getting those recruitment opportunities, still making available to us so that we can go ahead and engage with these professionals. Has it affected recruitment in a major way? I don't think so, because most of the organizations that have committed to giving and recruitment, to giving internships are still on that path itself. Will it go ahead and affect our full-time recruitment? And that might happen, but then again, that's something that's going to happen to everyone, and coming out from a top business school, that's a guarantee that you're going to fall back on in a lot of ways, right? So again, if this is going to be a hustle for everyone who's at business school, who's trying to make a career transition. But just don't give up on the situation. The situation is bad for everyone. Even people who are right now in jobs at this point in time, they are having it bad as well, right? So it's just worse everywhere, and there is no excuse for us to not hustle and try and get the best job that we can get in this scenario. In terms of intake, admissions, because of COVID-19. Historically, whenever there has been a recession, business schools' intake has been higher, right? Generally, because people generally kind of get laid off jobs, and then they go back to spend 2 years or 1 year at an educational institution so that it can upskill themselves, ride out the recession, and then go back out into the marketplace. I believe that there will be similar situations here. But what might complicate this is if the medium of instruction becomes online, for the foreseeable future. That might be a challenge in case like people don't want to get to an online education. But we don't know, right? We don't know that if that's going to be a norm for the next few years coming out, right? So honestly, no one really knows. But I think there will be an uptick in the admissions number, but very marginally, not really on the historical levels of uptick.
Great. Thanks for your view on that. And I think with that, I'm done with the question that I had. We do have a lot of questions from the audience. So let me just start with Aryaman.
Yeah.
And I think what Aryaman wants to know is, how did you sort of leverage your work experience in oil and gas to sort of get an admit? So I think basically what he wants to know is, again, being an unconventional background, how did you sort of relate your past experience to what ultimately you want to do beyond your MBA?
Correct. I think that's a great question, and this is something that I had to do a lot of introspection over, right? So oil and gas, I mean, if you look at the numbers of people who come from an energy background, generally to business school, it's generally at the at 2%, right? So let's say you have 5,000 seats in total of all the M7 schools. I'm taking a very rough number just for a back of the envelope calculation. So 5,000 seats, 2%, that's about what, 100 seats, right? 100 seats in all. 40% international, so that reduces it to 40 seats at the end of the day. And if you are depending on your gender, you might have a lesser reduction in lesser number of seats available to you. So let's say 40%, 60 to 40% male to female ratio, so that's about 24 seats if you're a male candidate available to you if you're coming from a natural resources industry or an energy industry for that matter. So you have to understand honestly what your competition is. Okay, my experience, and certainly Aryaman's experience, will let a lot of leadership come into the picture. It may not let a lot of analysis come into the picture, or let's say business understanding come into the picture, but you have to leverage your leadership experiences, because that's what I found is will set us apart, who's coming from the energy background, or background from a mining industry, right? Because you are taking a lot of large projects under yourself. You are probably handling a lot of budget, like large value projects with a huge value budget and a number of people. So that's something that you want to honestly go ahead and leverage. At the end of the day, you have to understand that these business schools, at least the M7 business schools, are more of a leadership development program. Okay, and you need to bring some of those leadership skills to the fore. If that's something that you can really talk about, honestly talk about, authentically speak about, then you'll make a great candidate over the over the regular let's just say consultants or the bankers who kind of hold the business school day experience. I hope that answers the question, right? Is there another question?
Sure. Great. Yeah, it did. Should I just move on to the next question?
Yeah. I mean, Aryaman can reach out to me separately on LinkedIn as well, and I'll be happy to talk about him.
Can you hear me, Nishant?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Sure. So I think this next question that I want to take up is from Gokul, and I think it's a very interesting question which has sort of not come up before. But again, how important as a factor was the post-MBA visa in sort of like pursuing an MBA in the US? Because again, US is supposed to be like one of those countries where like you could get into challenges with respect to employment visa. So how did you sort of factor in that consideration?
I mean, yeah, that's a fair question.
To apply to US schools?
Yeah, that's a fair question, Gokul and Ayush. I mean, and that's another reason that I did not choose Europe for that matter, because I understood after speaking to a ton of people in Europe that you generally have a 6 months visa unless you are planning to do entrepreneurship right after school. Then they can give you like a extended visa, long-term visa itself. I had no plans of doing entrepreneurship honestly, and that did not materialize in my plan. So the US kind of made a material choice, like an optimal choice for me in terms of visa. Also, what I saw is that this was a trend at that point in time, that most of these business schools were converting their programs to a STEM MBA program. So that kind of gives you like a 3-year window for your visa to convert, let's say, to an H1B, and that kind of helps you through, right? So that did play an important factor for me to go ahead and consider US as a possible destination, like a viable destination for my MBA.
Great. I'm hoping that you can still hear me, Nishant. Sorry, I don't know why this internet is. Nishant, can you still hear me? Sorry.
I can hear you. I can hear you. Okay, I see a question by Keval Agarwal who says, who's asking about funding opportunities in a business school as a fellowship or assistantships, and what factor does it depend on? I think good question, Keval. There are funding opportunities available in terms of not only scholarships, but also in terms of funds that are available to for your education. Okay, fellowship applications will generally depend on the quality of your application, and let's just say how special you are, right? So if you can demonstrate that you are a special candidate that the school doesn't like to lose, then you're definitely in the game for gaining a large amount of scholarships. So CBS, for that matter, gives out a ton of scholarships. I mean, all the Indians that I know probably have some sort of a scholarship, okay, which ranges from as little as 20% to 80% of scholarship. But it all depends on what your profile is like, and how do they rank you in their scheme of things. Secondly, you spoke about assistantships, and so those opportunities are available. And you can go ahead and apply to teaching assistantship positions, research assistantship positions, which are kind of well paid and kind of will take over your daily expenses, your rent expenses while you are here in the US. I hope that answers the question. So, okay.
Yeah, I think it did.
Yeah.
So there's another question by Hitesh Duseja. So he
Okay.
asks basically 5 years of consulting experience post qualification. Basically, does 5 years of consulting experience help you landing in M7B schools? So what's your take on that?
I mean, I don't see a reason why not. M7 schools are loaded with people with consulting backgrounds, right? And if you see the class profile, generally about 30% of the people in all these M7 schools are consultants, right? And honestly, they have done consulting for most of their part, maybe have had a gig on an entrepreneurial gig on the side or so. Okay, that's the general profile that you kind of look at. So I don't see a problem with this. But again, if it's a top tier consulting firm, that's great. And what kind of experience you've had. So you need to be able to talk about you need to be able to talk about evocatively about what you've learned in all these experiences, and how does that translate for you to go to an MBA. There are a lot of people from the consulting background, so that shouldn't be a problem. And obviously you can speak to ex-consultants who are at M7 schools to understand what they spoke about, what are their skills, what is the skills they talked about, and that which was important for them. Yeah.
Okay. Ye- Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
So, Nishant, there is a GMAT related question for you. So,
Sure.
basically, you went from 570 to 740, which is a huge jump. So, Clint is asking, what were your challenges while preparing for the GMAT, and how did you manage to slide from 570 to 740? I think it's a great question. So, can you tell
Right.
them about that?
I mean, there were, okay. I've actually, I have a separate video on with e-GMAT about the entire GMAT session itself, and
Yeah.
that kind of speaks to it. But I'll tell you what my challenges were. So since the oil industry downturn was going through, I think I was at a risk of maybe losing my job, and friends around me were losing their jobs as well. So that is a stress, right? I had some challenges back home as well. So those are some of the challenges, stresses that I was facing through. In terms of going from 570 to 740, I think what the most important thing was that I, I I had to figure out as to what not to worry about. I knew I was good, okay, but it was a stress that was killing me on the day of the examination. Okay, so for me, the practice was important. You need to go ahead and practice to make sure that you're really doing well on the mock examination before you go ahead and actually give the test. Okay, if you want a number one takeaway advice, this is this: you don't go ahead and give your examination until you get the desired score on the mock examination. Okay. Apart from that, I can, if Clint reaches out to me on LinkedIn or separately, I can, have a detailed deep dive with him on the GMAT session itself. I mean, I had a lot of different strategies to handle sentence correction, critical reasoning, RCs, quant as well. And it's just a little difficult to compress all of that in 2 minutes. I mean, I'm happy to talk to him separately, or, even reach out to me separately.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there is another question. So basically, I think a lot of people want to know about the leadership experience. So there's one question by Ursh, which is, on the part where you mentioned about having stories of leadership experiences for people who are fairly new in there, or even have, let's say, 3 years of experience, but are
Right.
planning to do for an MBA. So I guess basically wants to know, what do you suggest for someone who has, let's say, just 3 years of experience? How does he portray leadership?
Right. I mean, okay. So to understand leadership in context of, in context of the US business schools, or rather business schools in general, for that matter. Leadership for business schools means that you are going ahead and starting something new. You are innovating, or you are incorporating something new within your organization. Okay, be it your organization may be a startup, your organization may be a multinational company. Okay, so when you are going to start up something, start a new project altogether, you're taking an initiative, you're going to convince someone, one of your bosses, maybe one of your managers, maybe. Okay, so that's the context they are looking at in terms of leadership experiences. Okay, have you had challenges, convincing someone? What was the story like? So did you have to go through few hoops? How did you go ahead and convince someone? Like, did you have to influence someone else to influence your boss? Or did you, give him a technical analysis, and then you, went ahead and convinced your boss? So you have to talk about some of those. I think one of the other things that's important, and I'm going to reach out to a book that I read through. So I think this is one of the good books. This is HBR's first read on leadership. Okay, you should start reading books on like this. Okay, because these books will kind of tell you as to what the businesses are looking for when they're talking about leadership. They talk about negotiations in this. Are you doing a lot of negotiations in your work? Maybe take up some projects right now in the COVID situation. Maybe they'll turn up right now, and you have a chance to make an impact. So those are the experiences that they really want to hear about. Make those interesting stories, make those interesting connections, so that you can really heartfeltly talk about some of these experiences in your application. I hope that's helpful, Harsh.
Okay, so I think we'll take two more questions. So there is
Sure.
one question from Anmol.
Yeah.
So let me share that. So basically, Anmol asks, as an engineer in a major software firm with 3 years of experience, so how much should he focus on leadership? So,
I mean, your
yeah.
all applications should be on leadership, Anmol. I mean, I'm sorry to say, but there's a lot of you right now who are applying to business school. Okay, and that makes it really, really, really competitive. Okay, so you want to say something, Karthika?
No. Continue. Yeah.
Sure. So I think your differentiation from others, other candidates, is going to be a leadership experience. So understand who your competition is when you're applying to business school. Okay, your competition is not me, who's coming from an energy firm. Your competition is not a consultant who's coming from a McKinsey, Bain, or BCG. Your competition is the person who's sitting right beside you on the very next desk to you. He's competing with you. When business schools are evaluating your applications, and your application comes in, as well as the person who's sitting next to you, they're comparing you against each other. Okay, so does he have a higher GMAT score? Does he have more experience? Does he have more leadership experience? You have to figure that out. So your entire, because there's a lot of you applying on Anmol, software engineer at a major software firm. Your main game should be honestly to figure out what all leadership experience you can bring in to the conversation, and how you can talk about it.
Okay, so Nishant, two personal questions.
Yeah.
So basically, where are you interning currently?
I'm going to be interning at an investment bank.
Okay.
Bank of America. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. Yeah, that was an interesting question.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, that's going to start. I'm not interning currently. They're going to start on through next month.
Okay, so final question.
Yeah.
So how can someone leverage their entrepreneurial background, and does entrepreneurial background outweigh in your MBA applications at Columbia?
I mean, in terms of people who come in with an entrepreneurship background, I mean, those.
So basically, people who have entrepreneurial background as compared to, let's say, people who do not have entrepreneurial background, how does the entrepreneurial background outweigh that?
Not really. I mean, Columbia talks about having an entrepreneurial mindset, which is very different from having an entrepreneurial background. Okay. So the entrepreneurial mindset does talk about if you can take, let's say, independent decision, or let's say even if you're an MNC, right? Can you lead a small project which you can initiate and lead throughout? That's also entrepreneurial in a lot of ways, because your entrepreneurship background will have an impact. Let's say if you can convince someone, if you can talk about something that you led to convincing of a VC firm, let us say, for that matter. Okay, how did that go? How did that conversation go? What is your product about? Were you able to sell your product to the market, to the masses or not? So those are something that you really need to talk about. Okay, you can make a very good story out of it, or you can make a really bad story out of it. That's really upon you. You can also talk about maybe if you had a failure with an entrepreneurial organization, because that seems to be in vogue these days. So you can talk about that, see what are your learnings, and that can be one of your failure stories. I mean, if you have had a side gig as an entrepreneur, let us say, then make one part of your story as an entrepreneur. Like, let's say your failure story is an entrepreneurial story, but your success stories are, let's say, your corporate stories that you can talk about. If you've been an entrepreneur in an entire life, just talk about the leadership experiences you've had in the context that I've spoken about earlier, and read the books that I can talk about right now as well. And those will give you a lot more context about what to talk about. You have to spend time, guys, to craft your application, and it is then that you don't really need a consultant. You need to think through about what are the elements that you can bring in from your past life and build into your application.
Thank you so much, Nishant. So, guys, with this, this session has come to an end. So, I'm going to pitch for the next session. So, next session we have again for Columbia Business School, and so basically, the next interview will be Santiago Sarkis, who is an ex-Bain consultant and who will talk about how he cracked one of the most selective business schools, that is Columbia. And he will share what has his GMAT experience been, and what was his motivation behind MBA, and how he is dealing with this COVID-19 situation. So I have shared the registration link with you above. So I hope you like this session, and I hope to see you again on next Monday.
Right.
So thank you so much, Nishant. Thank you, Ayush. That was Ayush. I'm Karthik from e-GMAT, and
Karthik, can I make one last comment though?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Sure. I mean, this is something that's been weighing on my mind as well. I mean, COVID-19, right? How is COVID-19, impacting a lot of applications? I think for all the applicants who are thinking of, going and applying in the 2021 class, don't let this crisis go to waste. Honestly, this 2021, I mean, this COVID crisis right now gives you a lot of opportunities. This is coming from someone who's already been through a downturn at some point in his life, and this is like a second downturn in his life right now. So when you need to start thinking beyond the potential job loss that you might have, okay, which I hope you don't have at any point in time, but let us say it does come to you. You need to make most use of that opportunity. Okay, go ahead and, let's say, join an NGO, work with them to feed, to help out other people as well, right? Make sure that you're doing something bigger than yourself at the end of the day. And if it turns to a, if it works well for an MBA application, that's great. Even if it doesn't, then it's something good you have done for the world itself. So make sure that you don't let this crisis go to waste. Maybe take up a project within your organization itself, right? That can help your company cut down costs. And that is something that you can talk about in your leadership examples, coming into the future. I wouldn't be surprised if schools start talking about, asking questions about what was your, how did you handle COVID-19? I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. So, make sure that you don't let this crisis go to waste, guys.
Thank you so much, Nishant. I think that's a great note to end with.
Thank you.
And I think, yes, COVID-19 is a situation that we all are fighting with, but I think we can come out strong. We just have to, face the brunt of it, and we have to face it strongly.
Sure.
So good luck to everyone. Thank you so much, Nishant. See you next week.
Yeah, I will be there. Thank you, Karthika. This was wonderful. Thank you to yourself and Ayush. I really enjoyed talking to you guys. And Karthika, thank you for taking over as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. See you.